patient refused the black nurse until she spoke the secret code. Only his unit would know the walls of Red Rock VA Hospital smelled like antiseptic and abandonment. Faded flags sagged in the dusty light that leaked through long, cracked windows. Nurses moved like ghosts between rooms. Some patients screamed all day. Some hadn't spoken in years. And then there was Room 2C, Thomas Hawthorne. The old man hadn't let anyone touch him in 5 days. He was a decorated combat vet. 3 tours in Iraq, 1 in a theater no one listed. Silver Star. Discharged under circumstances the VA still classified. The staff called him Hawk behind his back. He didn't answer to anything but silence and whiskey. A bile-green vomit bucket sat at the foot of his bed. His wounds smelled like rot. Lieutenant Amani Rhodes stood outside the door with her clipboard tucked under one arm and a latex glove snapped halfway on her left hand. She stared through the small glass pane in the door. Hawk was sitting upright today. That was progress. He'd been curled into himself since Sunday, like a man expecting a final blow. The nurse beside her shifted awkwardly. "I told you, Rhodes, he's difficult." Last nurse, he threw the tray at her face. Amani didn't respond. She adjusted the strap of her watch, then clicked the door open with a deliberate slowness that made the younger nurse step back. Hawk looked up. His eyes were shot through with red, not from crying, from damage. Something about the way he stared at the door felt tactical, as if every inch of the world was still a battlefield, and everyone was still a possible threat. The second he saw her skin, her posture, he narrowed his gaze. "No!" he rasped. Amani walked in without pause, shutting the door behind her. "No!" he said again, louder. "Get out! I want a different one." She didn't flinch. "Your BP's 160 over 105. If we don't—" "I said no. I don't take orders from—" He stopped short of finishing the sentence. But everything in the air, the venom in his eyes, the tightness in his jaw, said the word anyway. Amani sat in the chair beside the bed and placed the clipboard on her lap. He pointed a trembling finger at her. "You think I'm some confused old white man who doesn't know what's happening. I know exactly what this is. Another goddamn woke stunt. Sending you in here to make a point. Well, message received. You can go." She looked at him for a long moment, not with pity, not even with judgment. Just measured silence, the kind that told the room she'd seen worse. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, worn blood pressure cuff. "Roll up your sleeve." He laughed. It was bitter and phlegmy. "You're not hearing me. I said—" Amani's voice was quiet but cut clean through him. 19er Delta, Osiris Protocol. Hawk's body snapped rigid. The room changed. Amani didn't move. She just looked at him like she'd opened a locked door and was waiting for him to step through. He stared at her, no longer seeing the skin tone he hated or the uniform he didn't respect. He saw something older, deeper. A ghost. A name buried in the red soil of a jungle where only the dead and forgotten still whispered. "Say that again," he croaked. "No." He sat up straighter, or tried to, his back seized mid-motion. "Who are you?" "I'm the nurse you tried to throw out." "Bullshit, you're—" He stopped himself again. She waited. "You were there," he said. "Jesus Christ, you were there." Amani didn't confirm or deny. She just stood, strapped the cuff to his arm, and started pumping. His eyes were wide, flicking between her face and the floor like he was trying to remember a dream before it slipped away. "They told me Echo was dead," he muttered. "They told me none of you made it out." Amani looked him in the eye as she released the valve. "Not all of us did." Silence. The cuff deflated with a slow hiss. "BP's up," she said clinically, "but you already knew that." He was shaking now, not from fear, but from the kind of adrenaline spike only a man with blood on his hands recognizes. His fingers twitched, ghost memories firing behind his eyes. "Why are you here?" he whispered. I work here, Amani said. I'm not supposed to, but I do. He studied her, like he was trying to match her to a face from 12 years ago. You were the field doc, with the scarf. Yeah, she said, softer now. That was me. Hawk leaned back, suddenly exhausted. The fight in him ebbed like a receding tide. They buried us, he said. She nodded. And now someone's trying to dig it up. The door opened behind them. It was the younger nurse from earlier, holding a medication tray. Oh, sorry, I didn't know. It's fine, Amani said without looking back. He's calm now. The other nurse blinked, then stared at Hawk. The old man wasn't shouting, wasn't throwing anything. He was just sitting there, breathing heavy, eyes glazed like someone halfway between past and present. I'll come back, the nurse mumbled, and shut the door again. Amani turned back to Hawk. She started cleaning the infected wound on his arm, left over from a surgical site that hadn't healed right. He didn't flinch. He barely noticed. His mind was somewhere humid, somewhere loud. He whispered, "We left Echo behind." You didn't, Amani said. That made him look up. No one told me, he said. No one told any of us the truth. A long pause. Then why did they tell me she was dead? He asked. Because they wanted it clean. No survivors means no testimony, no mess. You mean no witnesses? That too. He coughed. It rattled something deep in his chest. Amani applied gauze and a fresh dressing. You need antibiotics. You're septic. He nodded absently. Then, you were a better shot than most of our snipers. You should have seen me in Afghanistan. He laughed. It was short, raw, real. For the first time Hawk looked at her, not with hostility, not even with awe, just with recognition. Rhodes, he said. That was your name. Still is. She didn't say it. She didn't have to. I thought you were just some nurse, he murmured. Amani met his eyes. There's no such thing as just a nurse. He let that hang in the air. Then he reached slowly, deliberately, and took the meds she offered from the bedside tray. He swallowed without a word. Outside the room, the hallway buzzed with fluorescent hum and distant footsteps. Amani stepped out and leaned against the wall, steadying her breathing. Her pulse was a quiet hammer in her ears. Everything okay in there? The young nurse asked cautiously. Amani looked over. He'll let me treat him now. What changed? Amani gave her a tired smile. I spoke his language. The nurse frowned. I didn't hear anything. You weren't supposed to. Behind the door, Thomas Hawk Hawthorne stared at the peeling paint on the ceiling and whispered to no one. Echo's alive. And somewhere deep beneath the VA, in a locked archive that hadn't been touched in a decade, a file marked Osiris Protocol began to hum on a long-forgotten server. Redacted lines, satellite footage, names of men and women who never officially existed. Someone had just pulled the first thread. And Amani Rhodes wasn't here to play nurse. She was here to finish what they tried to bury. The next morning, the fog outside Red Rock VA sat heavy and still. Trees loomed like half-forgotten sentinels, their limbs clawing toward a pale winter sky. Inside, the corridors of the hospital pulsed with their usual rituals. Bed checks, pill counts, IV drips, muted screams from the psych wing. But in room 2C, silence had become sacred. Thomas Hawthorne hadn't spoken to anyone else since yesterday. Not the cleaning staff. Not the neurologist. Not the priest who came to read him last rites 2 weeks ago. Only Amani. And when she entered that morning, he was sitting straight-backed, fully dressed, boots on the floor like he was reporting for duty. You slept? She asked. He nodded. First time in 4 nights? Dreams? No, just the jungle. She checked his vitals. How's the pain? Manageable. A beat. I remember more now, he said. Amani didn't look up from the blood pressure cuff. About the mission? No, about you. His voice was soft, almost reverent. They said we lost Echo in the second ambush. that she got caught in the crossfire. I remember screaming over the comms. I remember the evac being too far out. They told me you didn't make it, but I saw you. You were dragging someone." Amani's hands stilled. "I was dragging your lieutenant," she said. "You remember what they did to him?" Hawk's face darkened, the lines in his forehead deepening like trenches. "They found out he was leaking positions to the mining corp. We thought we were securing hostages. He thought we were securing lithium." Amani stood slowly. Her body felt heavier in this room, older. She turned away from him, and the years collapsed around her. 10 years earlier, Kasai Jungle, Central DRC Operation, Osiris Protocol, July 14, 2016, Row 300, Zulu. The heat was like breathing through a wet rag. Night vision painted the world in neon green. 7 members of Ghost Team Victor were moving single file through the underbrush, rifles up, silence absolute. Amani Rhodes, 28, walked third in the stack, right behind Captain Hawthorne, and just ahead of a scrawny Congolese translator barely out of his teens. His code name, Echo. He'd barely spoken the entire flight in. But when they'd landed in the drop zone, he'd whispered a single phrase in perfect English: "If the trees go quiet, run." They hadn't listened. Now, the trees were silent. The first IED hit like a thunderclap. The lead man, Reyes, vanished in a burst of heat and dirt. Amani dove instinctively, dragging Echo down with her. Gunfire erupted from the left flank. AKs. Close. 24 voices shouting in Lingala. Hawk's voice over comms. "Ambush! Break east! Break east! Rhodes, do you have Echo?" "I have him!" she yelled, pulling the boy to his feet and shoving him forward. Tracer fire lit the jungle like strobe lights. Amani shot 2 men dead in the grass, center mass, clean. She didn't think. She moved. Contact right. Contact right. The team splintered. 2 more men down. They made it to a dry creek bed before they regrouped. Blood soaked Hawk's left arm. The lieutenant was missing. Echo was gasping, hyperventilating. Amani knelt by him. "You need to breathe. In, out, focus." "I told you they were watching," Echo hissed. "The camp is a front. There are no civilians, just lithium mines." Amani blinked. "You're sure?" "I saw them. American equipment. Chinese workers. Our side. Their side. It doesn't matter." "Then why did they send us?" He looked her in the eye. "To clean up." Present day. Red Rock VA Hospital. "I never asked what happened after I blacked out," Hawk said. "They flew me out. Said the op was a success. 2 hostiles neutralized. Intel secured." Amani crossed her arms. "That's not what happened." He nodded slowly. "No, it's not." Amani glanced at the hallway, paranoia itching beneath her skin. "I need to ask you something. Have you seen anyone new around the ward? Anyone watching you but not part of the staff?" Hawk smiled bitterly. "There's always someone watching me. Even when I piss, I feel the lens. I'm serious. So am I." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a Polaroid. It was faded, taken from a drone snapshot. 4 bodies in the jungle, one of them circled in red ink. This was taken 30 minutes after our last contact. "Recognize that?" Hawk squinted. "Yeah. That's the rebel comms tower." It was supposed to be gone, but this was dated 3 hours after command claimed it was destroyed. Someone lied. Hawk stared at the photo for a long time. They always lie. Then he looked up. "So what do? We find out who's still alive, and who's being silenced." That night, Amani went to the hospital archive. Not the digital system, the real archive, in the sub-basement. Rows of rusted filing cabinets and yellowed folders nobody had touched since before most of the wars had ended. She found a box labeled Black Ops, Unconfirmed, 2010-2018. Inside, a shredded mission debrief, unclassified by mistake. One line stood out. Subject Echo was recovered but later deemed a security risk. Status, unknown. Her blood ran cold. He made it out. Echo didn't die in the ambush. So where was he? In the psych wing, a new patient had been admitted the day before. No name, no ID, burn scars along his arms. Unresponsive, eyes darting like a caged animal. Staff said he spoke only in a broken French dialect, except once last night, during a fever dream. He had whispered, "Osiris was a lie." Back in room 2C, Hawk stared at the wall, then at his own hands, then at the photo Amani had left him. He whispered, "Echo lived." Outside, snow started to fall, soft and silent. Inside, the temperature dropped. Not from the weather, from the truth digging itself up. Because if Echo was alive, it meant the reckoning had just begun. Amani Rhodes didn't sleep anymore. She dozed, 15 minutes here, a half hour there, but sleep was a luxury you didn't indulge in when ghosts had started knocking. At 0300, she sat in her car outside the VA, engine off, gloved hands cradling a black thermos and eyes locked on the frost-laced rear view. Nothing moved, but the street lamp 2 blocks down was out, dead since last week, and someone had recently scraped the frost off the rear window of the parked sedan 2 spots behind her. A small thing, but Amani had learned long ago. In war, the small things get you killed. She entered through the west corridor using her old clearance badge. Technically expired, but no one at Red Rock had updated the scanner since the Obama administration. The halls were silent except for the dull thrum of forced heat and the shuffling wheeze of dying lungs. She walked with purpose toward the psych wing. Her steps slowed. Room 4B. The new John Doe. The man who had whispered Osiris was a lie in his sleep. Amani scanned the corridor, empty, then pushed the door open. The lights were dim. The smell of antiseptic and scorched flesh was thick. The man lay prone, body half-curled, face turned to the wall. His wrists were restrained loosely, not VA protocol. There was a camera mounted in the corner, but the red indicator light was dark. Disconnected. Odd. She approached the bed slowly. His burn scars were worse than she remembered, raw tissue along the shoulder and down the right flank. But beneath the damage, the face was familiar. God. It couldn't be. She crouched beside the bed and whispered, "Echo." His eyes fluttered open, cloudy, drugged but aware. He stared at her, then blinked. Then, with a dry, cracking voice, he whispered, "Rhodes." Her heart stopped. "It's me," she said. His eyes filled with something that looked like grief and relief twisted together. He tried to sit up, failed. "They said you burned," she whispered. "They told me you were dead." "Everyone who knew," he rasped. "They disappeared, ghosted, or went crazy, or died wrong." "Who brought you here?" His face tensed. "Can't say. Won't or can't. They're listening." She pointed to the camera. "That's dark." He gave a bitter laugh. "You think there's only one?" Amani's stomach turned. "Who did this to you?" Echo closed his eyes. "Same people who sent us. They never stopped watching." Later that morning, the psych nurse on duty, Claire Mendez, an LPN with a solid reputation, was found unconscious in the laundry chute. Blunt force trauma to the temple. Her master keys were missing. Echo was still in his bed, unmoved, but his wrists were now unrestrained, and a strange series of numbers had been scratched into the wall beside his cot in dried blood. DOS1, D9, D1 Sur, File Ghost, BL Key Canary, ID 6622X. Amani arrived just as security locked down the floor. She pushed through the crowd of nurses and orderlies to find the head of psych, Dr. Renner, a gaunt man with thinning hair and the body language of someone used to institutional failure, wringing his hands. "What happened?" she demanded. "Patient stable. Nurse Mendez is in trauma. This was unexpected. No sign of struggle. No prints. The cameras. What about them? They were all disabled simultaneously, remotely, from inside the network." He looked pale. "Wasn't local sabotage. This was surgical. Military grade." Amani stared at the blood code on the wall. She recognized the last line. BLK Canary, Black Canary Protocol. A classified emergency fallback trigger, known only to operatives marked as expendable high clearance, used when one of their own was being hunted from within. She stepped back, pulse climbing. Echo was signaling her, and someone inside the system had just heard it too. That night she met Hawk again. Not in his room, in the abandoned west stairwell where the second camera hadn't worked in 6 years. He was leaning on a cane, face drawn but alert. "You saw him," he said. Amani nodded. "It's Echo." "Jesus." "He remembered me." Hawk shook his head slowly. "I told them he was dead. I gave them the body count they wanted." "You think he blames you?" "No," Hawk said. "I think he wants us to finish what we didn't know we started." Amani exhaled sharply, pacing. "Do you remember who gave the final extraction order?" He nodded. "Yeah, it wasn't command, it was intel." "Langley?" "Worse, private contractor. Out of Nairobi. Clean suits, 0 insignia. They didn't speak once." She looked at him. "We need names." Hawk dug into his coat pocket and handed her a flash drive. "I've been keeping this under the floorboard since 2017. "What's on it?" "Helmet cam footage, part of the second wave after I was airlifted. Shows the cleanup crew. What they were really doing in that jungle. You never turned it in, would you?" She nodded, slid it into her pocket. A long silence. Then Hawk said quietly, "They're not just erasing the mission, they're erasing the unit." Amani didn't speak for a full 10 seconds. Then we make it loud." She didn't go home that night. Instead, she drove an hour north to a farmhouse she hadn't visited in 5 years. Inside, a safe beneath the floorboards, a sealed sat phone, and a handwritten contact sheet. Names, numbers, dead drops. She dusted off the phone, powered it up, and dialed the first number on the list. The voice on the other end answered on the second ring. "Rhodes?" "Yes." "You know what time it is? I'm activating Black Canary." Silence. Then flatly, "Understood." She hung up. The gears were turning now. No going back. By morning, someone had deleted Echo's entire patient file from the VA's digital system. Not scrubbed? Deleted. Like he'd never existed, and someone had placed a single typed note in his chart folder. "You were warned. Silence is survival." Amani read it 3 times before folding it into her coat and walking, cold, controlled, toward room 2C. Hawk looked up as she entered. "We're in it now," she said. He smiled, grim and ready. "Always were." The cleaners didn't knock. They never did. They didn't wear name tags or carry hospital credentials. They moved in coordinated pairs. Ex-military, sharp-eyed, soft-stepped. Their gloves were surgical. Their language, precise. No wasted words. No emotion. Their role was misdirection. Death by natural causes, data by accidental loss, evidence by administrative error. And 2 of them had just walked into Red Rock VA Hospital. One black SUV, no plates, parked at 0432. Security waved them through without question. By 0500, they were in the administrative wing, requesting the entire patient log for rooms 2C and 4B. By 0600, Echo was gone. Amani arrived on shift at 0645. Coffee untouched, sidearm hidden in the lining of her parka. The moment she crossed the lobby, she knew something was off. The front desk nurse, Paula, had gone quiet. Orderlies kept their eyes low. There was a hum in the walls, a frequency only people who'd served in country ever heard. Predators in the perimeter. She moved fast to the psych wing. Room 4B was empty, sheets stripped, monitors off. No discharge papers. She turned to the nearest orderly, a kid named Jalen, new to nights. "Where's the burn victim?" Jalen blinked, confused. "What burn victim?" "Room 4B. Came in 3 nights ago." He frowned. "There's no record of that room being occupied this week." She stared at him. He looked back, innocent, blank. That was the moment she knew. They'd already started wiping minds. 2 floors up, Thomas Hawk Hawthorne sat in his chair, pulse oximeter on his finger, playing patient again. But his eyes never left the door. They'd visited him already, brief, courteous, efficient. "We're conducting an administrative review," one had said. Just routine. He knew better. He'd seen men like them before. Fallujah, Kandahar, Goma. Always after the mission, never during. Always cleaning up, never treating wounds. He'd asked for names. They smiled. Then asked if he had any memory of unauthorized personnel during his deployment. He said no. It was the only time in his life he'd lied without hesitation. Now he waited. Because if they'd come for him, they'd come for her next. Amani moved through the sublevels with muscle memory, heart rate even, mind a furnace. They'd erased Echo, but they hadn't erased the blood. She made it to the linen chute where Nurse Mendez had been found, still taped off. A single glove lay discarded under the crash cart. She picked it up and found a micro-puncture inside the thumb. Sedative delivery. Close contact. Needle hidden in the glove. Professional. Lethal. She scanned the hall. Nobody. No cameras here. Perfect place for a hit. But it didn't make sense. If the cleaners wanted Echo dead, why keep him alive? The answer hit her like a roundhouse to the chest. He wasn't a threat. He was bait. Hawk was gone by noon. The staff said he'd been transferred to Quantico VA for specialized evaluation. No warning, no ambulance logs, no federal signature. Vanished, just like Echo. Just like the rest of Ghost Team Victor. Amani's phone vibrated. Blocked number. She answered. A male voice distorted. "You're being watched. Exit through the pharmacy. Rear corridor. Now." Click. She moved. Faster than thought. Slower than suspicion. Through the hall. Past the pill dispensers. Into the cold back hallway behind the dispensary where the walls were concrete and the lights flickered from budget cuts. There, waiting beside the exit, stood a woman in civilian clothes, black jeans, tactical boots, oversized parka, mid-40s, scar on her neck, brown eyes like gun barrels. "I'm not here to hurt you," she said. Amani stared. "Then what the hell are you?" The woman nodded once. "Someone who used to be a nurse. Someone who buried too many friends after Osiris." Amani froze. "You were part of the support team?" "Logistics, extraction prep. They erased us before the mission even started." "How do you know me?" "You don't forget the medic who walked into a live firefight to drag out the translator. Even when the brass said he wasn't part of the manifest." Amani's throat tightened. "Echo?" "He was never on paper, just a human asset. That's why they can ghost him. No name, no file, no case." "Where is he?" The woman passed her a flash drive. "Not safe to talk here. This has coordinates. Dead drop. Off-site." "What's your name?" But the woman was already walking. That night, Amani parked off-grid, an old ranger station buried deep in the Shenandoah woods, long abandoned, now wired with her own gear. The flash drive cracked open under an offline system. Inside, a single video file. Date, 3 weeks ago. Location, unknown. Subject, Echo, emaciated, strapped to a gurney, speaking under duress. He was being interrogated. A voice off camera asked, "Who else knows?" Echo's voice was shredded from dehydration. Still, he whispered, "Only 2 left. Hawk and the medic." "Names?" "No." "Where are the backups?" "Gone." The camera cut, but in the final frame Amani saw it. A scar on his forearm. 6 digits inked in faded ink. 19D 6622X. Her own old service number code. He hadn't given her up. He'd pointed the way. To the ghost file. Amani stared at the flickering screen, every cell in her body on fire. Echo was alive. Hawk was in enemy hands. The cleaners weren't just sanitizing. They were preparing to erase everything, and she was now the last uncontaminated source on Osiris Protocol still walking free. Across the country, in a concrete chamber with no windows, Hawk sat restrained. Two men in black suits stared at him behind mirrored glass. One of them was holding a clipboard. "Subject uncooperative," said the taller man. "Doesn't matter," said the other. "We're not here to ask questions." He tapped the glass once. "We're here to shut the loop." Back at Red Rock, Amani placed a single call. Blocked. Routed through 6 dead servers. The voice on the other end answered in 2 words. "Black Canary?" She replied, "Ghost file is active." Target? Everyone who tried to bury us. Click. The hunt had officially begun. The last time Amani Rhodes accessed a secured satellite terminal, she was kneeling in 6 inches of blood-soaked sand in Helmand Province, screaming coordinates through mortar fire. This time, she was in a stolen storage room above a veterinary clinic in rural Stafford County, Virginia, surrounded by crates of antibiotics and outdated X-ray cassettes. The old laptop on the desk hummed like a dying insect. The uplink was burning hot. The clock was ticking. She entered the 6-digit service code from Echo's arm, 19D6622X. A prompt blinked. Authorized. "So open Ghost file?" She clicked yes. The screen went black. Then, Osiris Protocol, eyes only classified after action report, redacted level Delta. The first video began to play. Helmet cam footage, July 15, 2016, Oro 600s. Location, Sector 14. Kasai Jungle, Congo rain slammed down in sheets. The camera bobbed with breath and motion. Through the mist, men in black, not Ghost Team Victor, not rebels. Private contractors, armed and silent, moving through the jungle with tactical detachment. One man knelt beside a burned hut and pulled a data drive from a concealed sat phone inside a child's doll. Another pointed to 2 Congolese women bound at the tree line, blindfolded, mouths gagged. "Take the asset. Neutralize the rest." 3 gunshots. 1 scream. Silence. Then static. The feed scrambled. A second file auto-loaded. Audio transcript, declassified internal briefing, August 3, 2016. Operation Osiris is now classified non-attributional. Ghost Team Victor is to be listed KIA. Civilian casualties to be attributed to local militia activity. And the medic? Rhodes? She'll follow orders. And if she doesn't, she disappears. Amani sat back in the chair. Her chest was tight. The room swayed. They'd planned to kill her. Not as collateral, as containment. Ghost Team Victor hadn't been sent to rescue anyone. They were used to silence an illegal extraction gone sideways, an operation to recover stolen rare earth mining data from a Congolese civilian informant who'd gotten too loud. The supposed hostage camp was full of families. Families who saw too much. They sent Victor in blind. Then sent cleaners in after. And when Amani refused to leave Echo behind, when she refused to sanitize the story, they rewrote the mission and buried her alive in bureaucracy. She called the number again. Same dead uplink. This time, a voice she hadn't heard in years answered, "Rhodes. I need a name. You have 5 seconds." Who ordered the override on Osiris? Silence. Then, "General Brennan." Amani went still. Her jaw tightened. Brennan was retired. Retired 2 years ago, but Osiris wasn't a Pentagon op. It was a joint initiative. Joint with who? Private sector. Think tank? Black budget firm called Argonne Strategic. Former Langley, now off books. She remembered the name. They showed up in whispered reports. Contractors with diplomatic immunity. Cleaners with capital. Ghosts. They have Hawk. Then you're already compromised. Burn everything. Go dark. No. You don't get to save them. Watch me. Click. Amani stood at the edge of a fracture line now. Everything in her military training told her to disappear, shut it down, survive. But she'd already died once. In that jungle, in that lie. She wouldn't let them kill the truth again. She drove west, off-grid, to the one man who hated Brennan more than she did. Location: Bluestone Compound, West Virginia mountains. Subject: Kohler Nathan Claiborne, Retirement ex-SOCOM, 3rd Recon. Built like a downed pine tree. Smelled like gun oil and old books. Ran a survivalist commune with half a dozen former operatives who'd had the good sense to fake their own deaths. He opened the door shirtless, shotgun in hand, scowling like a feral animal. Rhodes. Colonel. He stepped aside. No questions, just grim understanding. Inside she showed him the footage, the transcripts, the mark on Echo's arm. He said one thing when the video ended. I told Brennan this would come back. Claiborne laid it all out. Brennan had worked with Argonne Strategic on offshore human intelligence projects under the guise of civil military mining security protocols. Translation: they sent black ops teams to developing countries to secure resource routes and erase competition. Ghost Team Victor was used to extract Argonne's compromised data asset. Echo had stumbled onto proof of illegal mining partnerships between U.S.-based firms and foreign warlords. The files were worth hundreds of millions. But Victor saw too much, so they became liabilities. And now, after a journalist nearly exposed the operation 3 months ago, they were tying up loose ends. Echo's not the end, Claiborne said. He's the ignition. Amani looked up. Then we light the fire. That night she used Claiborne's uplink to ping a ghost server buried in Sweden. She uploaded the ghost file to a failsafe account, set a timed release. 72 hours. Unless she stopped the clock, it would be sent to 4 sources: a Hague war crimes prosecutor, a South African human rights NGO, a former military journalist with nothing left to lose, and Echo's younger sister. But 72 hours was a long time when the walls were closing in. At 02:15, Claiborne's compound was hit. 2 drones overhead, 2 men on foot. Not a full kill squad, just a warning. Amani took one out with a scoped bolt-action rifle from the tree line. Claiborne knifed the other in silence. The drone fed off. "We need to move," he said. She shook her head. "Not yet." "Why?" "Because I'm not leaving until we get Hawk out." He stared at her. "You can't rescue everyone, Rhodes." "I'm not trying to rescue him," she said. "I'm trying to remind him who the hell he used to be." 2 hours later, she was on the road again. In her glove box, a copy of the ghost file. In her rear view, no one, yet. In an underground medical facility outside Langley, Thomas Hawthorne lay sedated under LED lights. A woman with a voice like water torture leaned over him, whispering, "You remember more than you're saying." Hawk's voice was a rasp. "I remember you. You were in the jungle too." Her smile turned sharp. "Then you know what happens next." But he did something she didn't expect. He laughed, blood in his mouth, but real. "You're late," he said. She leaned in. "Late for what?" He met her eyes. The medic already lit the fuse. Pain returned first. A slow bloom behind the eyes, sharp in the joints. Then came the smell: disinfectant, metal, plastic tubing, the vague sourness of recycled air. Amani Rhodes opened her eyes to darkness, not the comforting black of unconsciousness, but something deeper, contained, measured, controlled. She was lying on her side, cold floor beneath her, wrists zip-tied in front of her, mouth dry as ash. No windows, no visible exit. A single vent overhead, humming soft. Wherever she was, it wasn't the hospital. It wasn't anywhere on the grid. Her last memory, a back road near Roanoke. Then headlights, a sharp hiss, a hand on her mouth, the sting of a needle. She'd been taken. That much was clear. She sat up slowly, breathing through the ringing in her head. No immediate injuries, clothes stripped down to base layer, boots gone, phone gone, but they'd left her watch. Stupid, arrogant, or deliberate. She turned the face of it slowly. It was her field-issued Garmin, a tactical gift from a SEAL unit she'd pulled out of Kandahar. And like all good war gifts, it hid things. She held the face to the light, tightened her thumb on the bezel. Click. A slim magnetic razor dropped from the band. She smiled. Then got to work on the zip ties. 5 minutes later, Blood trickled from her wrist. Shallow cut. Intentional. The ties gave. She stood, joints aching, muscles locked from sedation. The room was maybe 8 by 8. Cinder block walls, industrial tile floor, a drain in the corner, a security-grade observation camera overhead, dead, or pretending. She checked the vent. Too small to crawl through, but it carried sound. A voice, distant. We underestimated her. Again. Another. She's military, the old kind. You don't kill that instinct with drugs. Footsteps, doors, silence. She closed her eyes and breathed deep, then lay back on the floor and screamed. 10 seconds later, the door opened. Fast. A man entered, tan coat, gloves, shock baton. Reassuring himself, she was still weak, still compliant. She wasn't. She struck him low, knee to groin, then grabbed the baton as he stumbled. One crack to the temple. He dropped, out cold. She pulled him inside and closed the door. Now she had a weapon, a uniform, and blood in her teeth. She changed, checked his pockets, level 2 access card, a ring of keys, no gun, but tucked in his chest pocket, an envelope already opened. Inside, a photo of her, labeled Rhodes A, subject Delta, expendable, terminate if non-compliant. On the back, written in pen, confirmed movement towards Site Echo 1, contingency in motion. She closed her eyes. They were tracking her every move. And yet, they'd underestimated one thing. Her memory wasn't just intact. It was a weapon. Flashback, 2016 Congo, final hours of Osiris. Amani's hands were covered in someone else's blood. The evac bird was 8 clicks out. Echo was hyperventilating, clutching a satchel with the drive inside. The rest of the team was dead or dying. Captain Hawthorne had taken a round to the shoulder but was still firing. Amani was the last to speak on comms. This isn't a mission, it's a hit job. She remembered now. She remembered the third team, the one no one mentioned. All white gear, no unit patches, fluent in Lingala. They had entered the village after Victor fell, and they had smiled as they pulled triggers. Back in the corridor, Amani moved like a storm cloud with purpose. The facility was deeper than she expected. 4 levels below ground. Sparse staff. Mostly silent hallways. The lights ran on a backup grid. This wasn't a prison. It was a ghost room. A black cell. She found a control room, empty. 1 console still active. She scanned for subject Thomas Hawthorne. Match found. Room S3. Medical detention. Status sedated. Watch level 1. She pulled the door open. He was shackled to a gurney, pale, thinner, hair shaved down, beard gone, but it was him. Hawk, she whispered. His eyes fluttered, then opened. When he saw her, he smiled. Amani. Her voice cracked. They said you were gone. I was. You remember everything? I do now. She reached for the shackles. Can you walk? With fire under me. Always. They moved fast, floor by floor, no alarms, yet. But time was burning. At the loading bay, 2 guards stood chatting. Too casual, not expecting ghosts. Amani struck first. 1 baton to the throat, the other to the temple. Hawk grabbed a sidearm and a radio. We've got 2 minutes. They ran. At the surface, the cold slapped their faces like absolution. They burst into the woods behind the compound. No headlights, no dogs, no drones overhead. Just stars and bare branches and the sick thrill of borrowed time. They didn't stop until they were deep in the tree line. Then they burned their stolen clothes. Back in uniform, combat boots, black thermals, sidearms holstered. 2 war machines waking up from hibernation. Later by a fire, Hawk sipped from a canteen. His hands were shaking. They kept showing me the footage, he said. The one where Echo's being tortured. Said it was my fault. That I'd failed command. That I'd broken the chain. Amani looked into the flames. You didn't fail. I didn't stop it either. A beat. He met her eyes. Why come for me? She hesitated. Then, because you never pulled the trigger. You just held the line. And when I ran into that jungle for Echo, you didn't stop me. He nodded slowly. That's something. That's everything, she said. The next morning, they reached a safe house Amani had prepared long ago. Inside, food, water, weapons, encrypted sat phone. She dialed in. The line clicked once. Still alive? The voice asked. For now. You've got 48 hours. Ghost file drops in 24. After that, all hell breaks loose. Amani glanced at Hawk. Good, she said. It's time they learned what ghosts sound like when they scream. Across the country, at a fortified facility under Argonne Strategic HQ, alarms finally triggered. Subject Rhodes, off-grid, subject Hawthorne, escaped ghost file, 24-17-59. A new order was drafted, Operation Shadowbox. Objective, terminate all remaining witnesses. Priority 1, but Amani was done running. The mission was now the war, and this time, she wasn't going in quiet. 24-0-0. The countdown had begun. The ghost file sat encrypted on 4 secure servers, each with a separate key, each time to drop simultaneously in 24 hours unless manually stopped. No firewalls, no warnings. Just truth, weaponized, uncensored, and globally distributed. Amani Rhodes watched the timer tick from the cracked screen of an old military-grade laptop as cold wind rattled the plywood walls of the safe house. 1 window, 1 door, 2 silencers, 4 magazines. She and Hawthorne hadn't spoken much since the escape, not because there was nothing to say, because everything that needed saying already lived in the space between their silences. The file was damning. It didn't just expose Operation Osiris as a war crime, it named names. General Brennan, Argonne Strategic, multiple intelligence officers, and contractors who were now highly placed in government oversight roles, quietly shaping policy, privatizing military operations, laundering blood money through humanitarian contracts. The footage was horrific. Bodies, families, executions staged as rescues. Ghost Team Victor's true orders, redacted in official logs, made explicit in voice memos and footage from helmet cams never meant to see daylight. Echo had copied the data. Amani had preserved it, and now it was primed to shatter the chain of command. Hawk lit a cigarette with trembling fingers. He hadn't smoked in 7 years, but something in his hands needed fire. They'll kill to stop this, he said. They already have. He nodded. You ready to be hunted worldwide? She met his eyes. Already am. At 0900, the phone rang. The encrypted sat line, one of 4 left in existence. Amani answered, a distorted female voice, calm, clipped. You don't know what you're about to do. Amani said nothing. The voice continued. You think exposure leads to justice? It doesn't. It leads to war. You crash this system. You don't cleanse it. You open a vacuum. The next version will be worse, hungrier, more violent. Amani spoke clearly. Then let them choke on it. Click. Washington, D.C. Argonne Strategic Headquarters. A black conference room, frosted glass, men and women in tailored suits, no ranks, no names. On the center screen, a still from Amani's hospital personnel file, another from Hawthorne's VA intake form. The senior official, white hair, thin-lipped, scar on his chin, leaned forward. Where's the leak? A junior analyst. There were no leaks. The file was copied internally in 2016. It was smuggled out on hard media. Non-networked. The medic was carrying it the whole time. He clenched his fist. 12 years of secrecy unraveled by a nurse with a grudge? She wasn't just a nurse, another replied. She was a soldier, and she remembers everything. Amani and Hawk drove north. Dirt roads, abandoned ranger trails. No GPS, no digital signal. Destination? An old Cold War-era fallout shelter beneath an unused ranger station in Pennsylvania. a legacy black site once used by JSOC for off-grid debriefs. It now housed the only physical backup of the ghost file. Hard drives in vacuum-sealed metal casings buried in concrete walls. Inside, cold and silent, they entered with retinal scan and a 12-digit fallback code Hawk had memorized in 2014. Once inside, Amani loaded the drives, connected to a secure uplink, and began preparing the staggered release protocol. "Once this starts," she said, "it can't be stopped." Hawk gave a small nod. "We don't stop it." But she hesitated. "There's one thing I haven't told you," she said. Hawk looked over. "Echo's still alive. We saw that. But the reason he gave them everything without breaking—" Amani opened her coat pocket and pulled out a photograph. A girl, maybe 9, brown skin, blue dress, sharp eyes like Echo's. Hawk stared at it. "They found his daughter," Amani whispered. "He didn't even know she existed. They used her as leverage." His voice dropped. "They're using the next generation to tie off our war." She nodded. "We're not just fighting to expose what they did. We're fighting to stop what they're building next." At 1400 hours, the signal was found. Argonne deployed 2 black site retrieval teams, all ex-military, all off paper, 2 choppers, no insignias. ETA, 18 minutes. Hawk loaded ammo. Amani checked the uplink. Ghost file upload in progress, 67%. She looked at him. "We don't win by killing them." He cocked his pistol. "No, but we slow them down." The first team breached at 1441. Suppressors, smoke, tactical silence. Amani used close quarters, tight hallways, blind corners. She dropped 2 before they reached the uplink. Hawk covered the fallback tunnel, took 1 round to the shoulder but held his ground. The concrete shook with gunfire and breath. Blood on the walls. Echoes of old wars. Amani slammed the final door closed and threw the breaker. Uplink, 98%. A man on the other side of the glass, suit, earpiece, sidearm, stared at her through the reinforced window. "Turn it off," he mouthed. She lifted her sidearm. "Watch me. 100% uploaded." Synchronizing to 4 endpoints disseminating. Unredacted ghost file. 20 minutes later, the world began to burn. The South African NGO posted the drone footage to 5 million followers. The war crimes prosecutor issued a public statement on live television. The journalist, exiled and embittered, dropped a 30,000-word expose backed with scans, memos, videos. And the final endpoint was a child. Delivered by hand in a safe house in Belgium, the drive was placed into the hands of Echo's daughter by a woman in a medical coat. On it, a video, Echo's voice. "If you're seeing this, I didn't make it, but the truth did. I fought so you wouldn't have to." She pressed play again, and again. Back in Pennsylvania, Amani and Hawk emerged from the tunnel hours later, bruised, bloody, but alive. Above them, the wind howled, snow fell, and for the first time, the world was watching. Location: upstate New York, industrial fringe safe house. 18 hours post-Ghost File release. The world was cracking open. In São Paulo, protesters marched outside the U.S. Embassy, holding signs that read, "Who is Echo?" In Brussels, 2 UN delegates walked out mid-session after drone footage from Osiris played on a live stream behind them. And in D.C., General Brennan's office remained dark, shuttered, silent. But Amani Rhodes wasn't celebrating. She was treating Hawthorne's bullet wound in the corner of a dusty garage lined with crates of decommissioned MREs and rusted tools. The round had punched clean through his upper shoulder. Muscle only, no fracture. But infection had started to bloom. She'd seen it before. Blood turned septic fast when adrenaline faded. "You're shaking," she said. "Not from the wound." Amani didn't look up. "I saw the footage," he said after a pause. "The little girl." She wrapped gauze tight. "She's the only reason Echo lasted as long as he did. He shouldn't have had to." "No," she agreed. "Neither should any of us." The news cycle ran 24/7. but the mainstream network stalled. Only independent journalists, activists, and whistleblowers ran the file in full. The Pentagon denied everything. Argonne Strategic released a one-line statement. The footage has been doctored. The allegations are baseless. But behind closed doors, damage control had become a containment directive. If the truth couldn't be stopped, it would be discredited, and the messengers eliminated. They weren't fugitives. They were infection vectors, which made their next move critical. Hawk coughed hard, spat red into a rag. You said there was a way to get Echo out. Amani looked at him. There is, but it's not sanctioned. Nothing we've done is. Where is he? Belgium. Hidden. The safe house he's in is compromised, burned last night, but the contact got the girl out. They're in transit. Hawk leaned back, expression unreadable. And Echo? Still there. He nodded slowly. We go. Amani stared. You just got shot. I've had worse after bar fights. You could die. We all could. Question is who we die for. 12 hours later. Charleroi, Belgium. Location, abandoned sanitarium, periphery grid. The extraction plan was dirty, risky, and desperate. Amani had coordinated with her old contact from Kabul, Layla Renier, a combat medic turned clandestine trauma courier. She now operated underground medevac chains across Eastern Europe, smuggling out ex-assets who'd outlived their usefulness. Echo was in one of her holdovers, a shell of a mental institution that hadn't seen patients since 1994. Only rats and revolutionaries now. But someone had tipped the enemy. Drones buzzed overhead. No boots on the ground yet. Inside, Layla met Amani with a cigarette in her mouth and a trauma bag over her shoulder. Didn't think I'd ever see you again, Layla muttered. Last I heard you were dead or teaching trauma to rich kids. I'm both, Amani said flatly. Where is he? Layla pointed. Basement, still stable, but they've been scanning comms. If we don't move him in the next hour, we will. Layla narrowed her eyes. I don't ask questions, but this time I'm asking. Why him? Amani didn't flinch. Because he was never supposed to survive, and that makes him the one person they fear more than me. In the basement, Echo lay on a steel stretcher, his chest rising in shallow bursts. He looked up as Amani approached. His voice was a hushed rasp. You got the girl out. She's safe. Tears welled in his eyes. They showed me the footage. I didn't believe it, until now. You don't need to believe it. You lived it. She grabbed his hand. We're getting you out. But Echo didn't smile. He looked past her toward the stairwell. You won't make it out with me. Don't say that. I've seen the plan, he whispered. You'll need to split the team. One stays behind, creates the misdirect. Amani froze. Hawk's voice from the stairs. Then it's me. The plan snapped into place like old bones cracking into rhythm. Amani and Layla would move Echo through the tunnel access into the canal route. A smuggler boat waited 5 clicks out. From there, they'd ghost into France and disappear. Hawk would stay behind, trigger the building's failsafe, set fire to the north wing, make it look like a suicide pact. Leave just enough DNA behind to slow down forensics. You don't have to do this, Amani told him, one last time. I do. Why? He stepped close, face still hard, but the war gone from his eyes. Because I was the one who told them you died. Because I followed the orders, and because I finally understand what I was really fighting for. She nodded. Not forgiveness, just truth. Extraction. 200 hours. Echo barely made it down the tunnel. Amani held him upright. Layla scouted ahead. Behind them, fire bloomed, hot, fast, brutal. Smoke poured from broken windows. Gunshots echoed behind. The building burned in defiance. By the time Argonne's kill team arrived, the sanitarium was ash. Only one body was pulled from the ruins. Dog tags charred, but legible. Hawthorne, T. USMC. 3 days later, Amani sat across from Echo in a safe house outside Lyon. The little girl was asleep in the next room. Her name was Zuri. Echo reached into his coat and pulled out the same satchel he'd carried in 2016. Inside, the original data drive. "Why'd you keep it?" Amani asked. He smiled faintly. "For when people stopped believing me." "You think they will now?" "I think they'll try to forget." Amani nodded. "Then we remind them again, and again, and again, until the war had no shadows left to hide in. Location: Paris, Periphery Safe House. 6 days post-Ghost file drop. Amani Rhodes stood in the doorway watching Zuri sleep. The girl was curled under a pile of mismatched blankets, her hand clutching a stuffed bear Layla had scavenged from a train station kiosk. The bear wore a little blue vest that said, "Je suis courageux," I am brave. Amani closed the door softly and turned to face Echo in the kitchen, where a map of Europe had been taped to the wall. Red dots marked every dead drop, every contact, every threat. At the center, circled in black ink, was a date. John 24. The hearing. "The UN finally caved," Echo said. "They're opening a closed-session war crimes review. Brussels, 2 days. They bringing anyone in?" "2 from the NGO, 1 analyst from Sweden. The rest are suits, scared ones." Amani poured herself stale coffee. "Scared's a start." But Echo didn't smile. "They're requesting your testimony." Amani looked up. "They want you to speak, not just in evidence, in person." A long silence. "And you?" she asked. "They don't want me. I'm not clean enough, not American enough, not dead enough." Amani swallowed hard. "This isn't about justice, is it?" "No," he said quietly. "It's about optics. Elsewhere. Washington, D.C. Argonne Strategic HQ Internal Briefing Room." The glass walls were fogged. A screen showed news clips looping endlessly. Drone strike on false intelligence. Whistleblower claims U.S. complicit in African resource war. Congress demands answers. General Brennan stood in front of a polished table, arms folded, jaw clenched. "She's still alive," he said. A thin analyst responded. "The Brussels testimony locks us out. If she speaks, even in closed session, we lose all plausible deniability. The press will smell blood." Brennan stepped forward, face cold. "Then she doesn't speak." Another voice, younger, female. "Sir, the optics of a public takedown are—" Brennan cut her off. "This isn't a takedown, it's an erasure." The room went quiet. Operation Recoil, approved Paris. Train station, day of departure. Amani, Echo, and Zuri blended into the crowds. Layla was already gone, last seen heading south with a forged passport and a satchel full of burner phones. Amani wore civilian clothes, hair dyed a muted brown. Her posture had changed, less soldier, more survivor. Echo walked beside her, limping but steady. They reached the platform as the train arrived. Brussels was 4 hours out. One changeover at Lille. Zuri reached for Amani's hand. "Will I see my father speak on TV?" she asked. Amani bent down, eye level. "No, sweet girl. But one day the world will hear him." Zuri nodded solemnly, squeezing her bare. Brussels. Undisclosed location. United Nations closed tribunal facility. The room smelled like air conditioning and polished wood. Amani had been briefed by 2 NGO attorneys, both nervous, one sweating bullets. They told her what not to say, what to emphasize, what would play well. She'd ignored all of it. Echo was kept in a separate room. The UN wouldn't risk putting him in front of international cameras. Too volatile, they'd said, but it didn't matter. They had her, the nurse, the war vet, the woman who'd saved a child, smuggled truth across continents, and lived to bleed it out in front of suits who couldn't look her in the eye. She sat down at the panel, adjusted the mic, and looked at each official. No script, no preamble, just memory. "I was deployed to DRC in 2016 as part of a joint special operations support team. The mission briefing claimed we were extracting American and Congolese hostages from a rebel compound. We were told to expect resistance. We weren't told the compound was a village, a civilian one. We weren't told it had already been cleared by contractors affiliated with Argonne Strategic. We weren't told we were there to clean up the aftermath of an illegal data operation tied to multinational mining interests. Her voice held, steady, cold, devastating. They ordered me to leave a wounded informant behind, a civilian translator. They labeled him non-essential. I went back for him. That made me expendable. You've all seen the footage. She paused. Made them squirm. Ask yourselves why it was hidden for over a decade. The tribunal lasted 4 hours. At the end, there was no verdict, only quiet. Notes passed behind folders. Promises to consider formal hearings and continue the inquiry process. Outside, the press waited like vultures in tailored suits. Amani refused to give them a soundbite. Instead, she walked straight past them. But the real message came an hour later, when the raw video of her full testimony, unauthorized, leaked online. Someone on the inside had recorded it, and someone had sent it to the world. That night, Echo paced in the safe house, pacing like a caged dog. Amani watched him from the doorway. "I didn't say everything," she admitted. "You said enough." But not about Zuri, not about what they did to her mother. He turned to face her. "You can't testify everything. Some things aren't meant for courts, they're meant for survival." Amani nodded. Then, without warning, Echo reached into his coat and handed her a small square of paper. A photo. Grainy. Surveillance quality. Layla. Dead. Slumped behind the wheel of a van near the French border. Shot twice. No investigation. No witnesses. Amani stared at the photo, her hand trembling. They found her. They're killing anyone who helped. Her eyes burned. And we just stand here? No, Echo said, voice calm. We finish what she started. The next morning, Zuri found a package on the kitchen table. Inside, the same stuffed bear with something sewn into its vest pocket. A note. This bear's seen more battles than most generals. Now he belongs to someone who's braver than them all. Be loud when they tell you to whisper. A. Zuri hugged it tight. She didn't cry. Elsewhere, an underground facility, D.C. Metro. General Brennan watched the testimony on a secure line. He didn't flinch. He simply turned to his subordinate and said, "Final phase. It's time. Target. Oh, the girl." Location: Southern Belgium. Undisclosed safe house. 5 days after the Brussels testimony. Snow fell in quiet spirals. The safe house was still. Inside, Amani Rhodes moved through the silence like a specter, checking locks, scanning shadows, heartbeat pacing with practiced rhythm. Every window had been blacked out, every exit prepped, but the threat wasn't coming. It was already here. Echo stood in the kitchen, staring at the grainy surveillance footage on his burner phone. 3 men, tactical black, no insignia, recorded 10 minutes ago in a town 40 kilometers east, moving toward the girl's location. Zuri. "We have to move," he said. "No," Amani replied, strapping a vest across her chest. "We make our stand." Echo hesitated. "With her here? We've spent 12 years surviving." "B," she said. "We finish by protecting." A long pause. Then he nodded. "Operation Recoil. Final phase. Directive. Target. Zuri Nia Luis. Objective. Leverage. Neutralization." Argonne didn't want to kill her. Not at first. She was the keystone, the proof of Echo's humanity, the emotional center of Amani's testimony. As long as Zuri lived, the world had a reason to believe, a reason to dig deeper. But a shift had occurred. The Ghost File hadn't just exposed corruption, it had inspired fractures inside the machine. Discontented contractors, whistleblowers, leakers, disillusioned analysts quietly forwarding footage to watchdog organizations, to victims' families. to retired colonels who once believed in the cause. The machine was breaking, and Argonne Strategic had only one weapon left. Fear. Kill the girl. Blame it on the chaos. Make her a cautionary tale. A burned match in a burning house. 22:30 hours, final assault. The first breach came from the tree line. 3 operatives, thermal-suited, suppressed weapons. They circled the house without speaking, checking corners, scanning for movement. They found none, because Amani was already behind them. She emerged from the snow like a wraith, and dropped the rear guard with a carotid strike. The second turned too late. Muzzle flash, 1 shot. Chest, gone. The third ran. Smart. Didn't make it far. Echo took him from the tree line with a clean shoulder shot, then dragged the body back and stripped the comms unit. Inside, Zuri was hidden in the false wall behind the pantry. Bulletproof, soundproof, fitted with a sat phone and 2 emergency vials of hemostatic agent. Amani leaned in, heart pounding. "Do you remember what I told you?" Zuri nodded, clutching her bear. "Be loud when they tell me to whisper." "That's right." Amani kissed her forehead. Back outside, 2252. The next wave came heavier, 4 by SUV, 2 drones overhead. Amani and Echo had 12 minutes to reset. "Do we go?" he asked. "We stay," she said. "We won't survive." "I'm not here to survive." He stared at her, then lowered his weapon. "I'll stay too." "No," she said. "You have to carry it." "Carry what?" "The end of it." 2310, full engagement. The house erupted in smoke and flashbangs. But Amani and Echo didn't fight from inside. They fought from below, crawling through a long-forgotten drainage trench beneath the house. It emerged 40 meters east, in the ravine. Their weapons were staged there. Ammo, claymores, traps. As the kill team swept the interior, finding only the girl's hiding place, empty, the real fight began outside. Amani lit the tree line with C4. Echo dragged the wounded one into the snow. Used his own comms against them. "Target not found. She's already gone." "Negative. Continue sweep." "Sweep this." He detonated the last mine. 2336. Silence. 6 men dead. 2 vehicles burning. The snow soaked red. Amani limped through the fire line, dragging her left leg, shrapnel torn. Blood soaked the side of her vest. Echo reached her. "You need to rest. I need to finish." But she was fading fast. They moved Zuri north that night, to a contact in the Netherlands, an Afghan refugee turned teacher, once trained by Amani in field medicine. She took the girl with tears in her eyes. "She'll be safe here." Amani handed her a drive, encrypted. Fingerprint lock. "What's this?" the woman asked. "Everything they didn't see." The woman nodded. "And what about you?" Amani looked down at her hands. They still trembled. "We don't get to disappear. We just stop running." 3 weeks later. Geneva Special Session. International Criminal Tribunal. General Brennan was arrested mid-flight. An ex-Argonne officer turned whistleblower had leaked communications, direct orders signed by Brennan authorizing lethal targeting of civilians during Osiris. It was the final crack. The hearing made global headlines. And then, quietly, one name was called to testify. Amani Rhodes. She stood before the court wearing no uniform, just a simple black jacket. The scars on her hands visible. The weight in her shoulders real. "I didn't come here for revenge," she said. "I came here for all the names that never made it into a report, for the translators, for the girls in the mining village, for the men in my unit who believed they were doing good. I was a medic. I was trained to keep people alive. But sometimes the only way to do that is to bring the whole lie crashing down. They told me silence was survival. They were wrong." Months later, Zuri School, Amsterdam. She wrote her name on a chalkboard. Zuri Nia Louise Echo Rhodes. When asked what she wanted to be when she grew up, she answered, "I want to tell the truth." Final scene. Cemetery, unmarked field, West Virginia. Amani knelt beside a blank stone. No name, no rank. She placed a bullet casing on the grave. and a patch from Ghost Team Victor. Then stood. Echo waited in the car, a notebook in his lap. It was full of names, dead, alive, vanished. He wasn't done, neither was she. As she climbed in beside him, he asked, "Where to?" Amani looked out at the horizon. "Wherever they still think the war is over."